Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome to Chapter 11 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, we begin by meeting Tashin Vorel, who purchases a ticket to Davonshire aboard the Howlin Wolf from Strides Goods and Services. His motives are unknown, but he is heading toward the Cassida system under an assumed name. Einur and Ayati unload their cargo and meet the passengers, including Ludin Sartan, the disguised Tashin Vorel, who lucked into having a solo berth on the ship. Ayati gets the passengers comfortable in their cabins, while Einur sees to the low berth passengers. There's a family of 4 going into cryosleep, and the children are frightened. Einur talks to them and gives them a brief tour to settle them down. Once everyone is tucked in, the wolf departs. On the journey back to the conduit, they come across debris of cargo containers. It looks like it's been hit by pirates, and they begin searching for signs of pirate ships in the area. By luck, there are none within scanner range, and they're able to continue toward the conduit. Back in the hospital, Sejana finds out from Inspector Hallow that Verdant Consulting is run by another former member of the Imperial Special Service, a woman named Sybil Clementine, and that she is ruthless. Hallow leaves to make a call to transfer Sejana to another hospital in case Verdant plans to come after her again. While she's in the hall making that call, a nurse comes in and starts changing Sejana's medicine. The technomancer adjusts her gauntlet and asks that if the nurse survives the fall, to warn Clementine that Sejana is coming for her. The room is small, with a single bed against the far wall. Machines hum and beep as a quick screen on the wall displays vital information. Sejana Lushale lies in bed, watching the nurse who has just entered her room. He looks fit and moves with purpose, and everything about him feels wrong. Maybe it's paranoia, maybe it's survival instinct, but Sejana knows he was sent to kill her. As he steps to the other side of the bed, he takes a small translucent pouch from his pocket and gestures towards the machine. I'm going to change this out real quick. The doctor wants you started on belapharmine, which is a slightly stronger restorative. It'll help you feel better soon. Sejana looks up at him and says, I have a request. Sure, he says, focused on his task. If you survive the fall, she says, fingers on her gauntleted arm beginning to twitch, tell Sybil Clementine I'm coming for her. The man snaps a look at her and reaches for something in the back band of his scrubs. But Sejana is faster, bringing her gauntleted fist up and around, slamming it into him. Purplish green energy swirls around her fist and pushes out against his chest. All right, well, obviously, Sejana is using some void magic here. So let's grab the dice and roll a check to see how it goes. So looking at the psionics in the rulebook, I think we're looking at a telekinetic punch. It only costs 1 psi point and is a difficulty of 8. It doesn't say anything in the rules about pushback, but I'm going to say that if Sejana succeeds, she's going to knock this guy back into the window. If she gets enough effect, he'll be going right through that window. Sejana's psi score is back up to her max, which is 12. And she has a skill level of 2 in telekinesis. That's a total of +4 to this roll. So let's see how it goes. Oh, Dark Star. That's double 6s. Plus the 4 is going to be a 16. That's 8 damage, and I think that's plenty of effect for the void energy to wreathe around his chest, lift him off his feet, and propel him through the window. I'm going to roll a d6 and see what floor Sejana's room is on in this hospital. Okay, that's a 2. So she's on the 2nd floor. So that's about as good as it can get for this poor guy. He's going to fall about 8 meters to the ground, and according to the rulebook, it's 1 die of damage per 2 meters. He's got a chance to make an athletics check to attempt to reduce the damage. Let's see, what does this guy have here? I'm going to say he's got a strength of 11, he's got a dexterity of 6, and an endurance of 8. Unfortunately for him, the dexterity of 6 doesn't get him any sort of bonus. I'm going to say he's got a skill rank of 2 in athletics. He looks like he can take care of himself. So we're going to roll this athletics check plus 2. Here we go. Oh, 4 plus 2 is a 6, and that's just not going to cut it. He's already taken 8 damage from the telekinetic punch, which has wiped out his endurance. Here's another 4 die. Oh, these dice are deadly. 2 more 6s, a 5, and a 1. That's 18 points of damage as he hits the ground. So his endurance is completely wiped out by the telekinetic punch. He's only got 17 points left between his strength and his dexterity. So unfortunately, that's it for him. They really should stop sending assassins after Sejana. She is deadly. So let's envision what this looks like. Sejana Lushale unleashes this devastating punch of void energy, which lifts the nurse up and jettisons him from the building with a grunt and a scream. There's a sickening splat and more screams from down below. Sejana forces herself out of bed, her wounds protesting as she reaches for the dresser by the wall. The door opens and Inspector Hallow charges into the room, laser pistol drawn and ready. She takes in the scene and looks at Sejana, hurriedly pulling her clothes out of the dresser. "What happened?" the inspector demands. "You were right," Sejana said. "They sent another assassin, and from the sound of it, he didn't survive the fall. I've got to get out of here." "Good news. I've got you going into a different hospital under a false name." Sejana shakes her head. "No, I've got to find a place to lay low. Somewhere they won't look for me. If I go to another hospital, they'll find me." "You still need time to heal. You have another day of restoration treatment." Inspector Hallow glances at the quick screen as the monitors go blank. Sejana tosses the med patches on the bed and finishes pulling her shirt over her head. Ayati had been thoughtful and brought a change of clothes. "I need my weapons. I assume they were removed when I was admitted?" "Yeah, they'll have them at discharge," Hallow says. "Can you help me expedite the process?" Sejana asks. "All right, let's go." They exit the room and head down the hall as another nurse comes running toward them. Hallow tenses, but Sejana puts a hand on her weapon arm. "What are you doing out of bed?" the nurse asks. "Apologies, but the inspector here needs my help with a case, so I'm discharging early," Sejana says. The nurse frowns. "I didn't see any discharge paperwork." "No time," Hallow says. "I need her out of here now." "But the doctor hasn't cleared her." Sejana steps forward and says, "I'll sign whatever paperwork the hospital needs for my discharge, but I'm leaving, with my effects, right now. Can you assist me with that, Thela?" Of course. Right this way." In the Alcatel system, Ayati is sitting in the cockpit, calculating their return jump to Cassida. Let's deal with those rolls real quickly. Once again, an astrogation check is easy, so we just have to beat a 4. Ayati has a +1 to astrogation, so let's roll the dice and see how it goes. An 11 total, an easy astrogation check. Since it's a task chain, Einur will get a +3 to his engineer J-drive check. That's also an easy check, so Einur's skill is 2 plus the 3 from the task chain, so he's adding 5 to this. He really can't fail this check, but, hey, it's fun to roll dice and see how well he succeeds. A 10 total, so the Astro Drive is ready to push them into the celerity conduit. Let's envision it. The Howlin Wolf approaches the bounds of the celerity conduit in the Alcatel system. It almost looks like a nebula as the shifting miasm of gas and energy ripples and flows. There's no sign of danger, so Ayati sets a direct course toward the conduit. As they near the threshold, she reaches over and begins the sequencer on the astrodrive. Throughout the ship, lights dim as the Wolf prepares to jump. The passengers settle into their rooms, ready for the transition into jump space. Over the comm, Einur says,
"Drive's powered up and ready. Take us home, Ayati."
"Ah, Cap," she replies, and nudges the ship toward the miasm. Like a log caught in a flowing river, the Howlin Wolf leaps forward and punches through into jump space. Within seconds, it's over, and the swirling lights of the jump cascade outside the viewport. Ayati leans back and says, "Jump successful, Cap."
"Good work, Ayati. Now let's see about getting some food prepped for our guests."
It's a few hours into the jump transit, and they're just wrapping up dinner. The stores in the galley aboard the Howlin Wolf aren't anything special, but Einur makes it his mission to cook for his crew at least once a week. Usually it's only Ayati who joins him for dinner, but occasionally Sejana as well. This time he has to cook for 16 mouths, and at least 3 different gut biomes. All in all, he feels like it turned out all right. Most of the passengers excuse themselves after dinner and return to their rooms, but a handful are sitting around the communal table with coffee in front of them. Einur turns to the young human woman and says, "Mixtuavir, what takes you to Devonshire?" The young woman blushes and says, "Oh, you can just call me Ash. My grandmother was a singer, and, well, she passed a few months ago, and, she always wanted me to sing, as well, and so that's what I'm going to do."
"I'm very sorry for your loss," Einur says. "I'm certain you'll make your grandmother proud. What did she sing?"
"Duvin electro ballads, mostly." Ayati coughs and says, "Wait, your gran wasn't Ashlyn Duvel, was she?" Ash beams. "Yeah, that's her. Blessed deep. I've listened to her music since I was in the academy. My roommate was a Duva who introduced me to her music." Ayati turns to Einur. "You've heard her too. I usually play Messages from Beyond the Gate of Stars when we're going through the run."
Einur grunts and says, "Of course. A beautiful voice." He turns back to Ash. "Do you have any contacts in the city?"
"Not really," Ash says, "but my grandmother told me if I ever wanted to sing in Devonshire, to go to the Imperial Arts Academy and tell them that she was my grandmother. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll have to get your quick info so we can stay in touch and you can let me know when you're performing," Ayati says. "I'd love to hear it live." "Absolutely. I hope it happens." Her smile falters. "What if I'm not good enough and I let my grandmother down?"
Einur leans forward and says, "Put that out of your mind. As a grandfather myself, I can tell you this. No matter what you do, your grandmother will be proud of you."
It's getting late, and the galley has been cleaned up. Most of the guests have returned to their rooms to sleep. Einur's doing one last check before heading off to bed himself, when he hears someone swear. Walking down the corridor, he walks past the small common room near the galley where 2 figures are sitting around a table, a Huldren and a human. The human throws down a handful of cards and stands up. "This is bullshit," he says. The Huldren spreads his hands and says, "Don't hate the player, hate the game." "Whatever," the man says and storms out. He gives the captain a brusque nod as he heads toward one of the staterooms. The Huldren, who watch the man leave, grins and says, "Captain, care for a game?" Einur enters the room and says, "Is that 3-suit Ferric?" "It is," the Huldren says, "and a spot has just opened up." Einur grunts and says, "All right, I'll play a hand or 2. "Smoke?" the Huldren says, gesturing toward a mushroom-shaped bowl with a bubbling liquid inside it. A handful of tubes extend from the bowl, and the Huldren puffs on one of them. Einur grabs another one and takes a long draw. Then he says, "What's your name, friend?" "Zerdan," says the other Huldren. He shuffles the cards and tosses them across the table.
What takes you to Devonshire?
Einur says and eyes the cards, selecting one and exchanging it back to him for a different card. Then he picks up a small cup and rotates it and dumps the dice onto the table. They show a 1, a 3, and a 2. Einur grunts and lays 3 cards face down in front of him. Zerdin does the same, exchanging 2 cards, and when he rolls the dice, they come up as a 2, a 6, and a 1. As he lays his cards face down, he says, "A little business and a little pleasure. I just spent a couple months on Strides, and it's time for me to get back to civilization. Shall we reveal?" All right, let's go ahead and make an opposed gambler roll to see who wins this little contest. Einur doesn't have the gambler skill, so he's going to be rolling at -3, +1 for his intellect, so he's at a base of -2. 7 on the dice, -2 is a 5. Not great for our captain. Zerdin has a gambler skill of 3. He's got a great chance of beating Einur here, so let's see what happens. Oh yeah, 9 + 3 is a 12. He cleans house over the next hour or so, to the point that Einur is unsure if he's cheating. But he understands why that other man stormed out of the room. Einur's not dumb, and he only loses around 500 rue. But after about an hour, he folds his last hand and says,
"Well, this has been an enlightening hour, Zerdin, but I'm gonna turn in."
The other Haldren grins. "Anytime you want to lose money, Captain, I'm happy to provide a rematch." Einur chuckles and shakes his head.
"I think I've learned my lesson."
Ayati is on her way back from grabbing a late-night snack from the galley when Luden Sartan turns the corner and almost bumps into her. She starts and almost screams, but manages to hold it in. Luden merely blinks at her and says, "I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone else was up at this time." Ayati holds up her bowl of cereal and says, "Just grabbing a snack. What are you up to? Luden, right?" He nods. "Yes, I was going to find a snack as well. I haven't spent any real time in the jump, so I was hoping to find a place to watch it for a little while." "Well, the best place is in the cockpit, but it's locked down for the night." Ayati looks down at her bowl of cereal. "But I suppose I can unlock it if you want to see the jump. Come on, let's grab you something to eat, and I'll take you up there." A few minutes later, Ayati unlocks the hatch into the cockpit and steps through. Luden follows, eyes searching all around. "So, you were saying you grew up on a small farm on Strides? Is this your first time being on a ship?" Ayati asks. "No," he says. "I've been on a few ships over the last couple years, doing some in-system runs. That's what made me want to learn ship engineering." Ayati nods, pointing to a seat to the left of the pilot's. "You can sit there." Then she slides into her seat and presses a button. Shutters on the viewport slide back, filling the room with bright coruscating lights. Luden gasps at the sight. "I know, right?" Ayati grins. "It's quite a sight. But don't stare at it too long, otherwise you'll go just a little mad." "How many times have you traveled the conduit?" Luden asks. Ayati leans her head back against her chair. "I've lost count. Hundreds, thousands maybe. The wonder never goes away, if that's what you're asking." "I can't imagine how it would," Luden says. "Another reason to travel to Devonshire. I want to see more new things." Ayati is quiet for a moment. Then she says, "You know, we might be able to find you a job once we get back. Our crew's pretty small, but maybe Einur could take you on as an apprentice. I worry about him splitting his time between being the captain and the engineer. It'd be nice to have a dedicated engineer so he could focus on the captaining." You would do that?" Luden asks. "I mean, I don't know if it's possible. We're kind of on the outs with our boss right now, but, this run should clear all that up." Ayati shrugs. "Hey, if you're interested, I can talk to Einur about it." "Who do you work for?" he asks. "Zhang Imports, Exports. It's a subsidiary of Wellston Transport." Luden nods and says, I would be honored to join your crew if your captain is willing to have me. I'll talk to him, Ayati says. Nah, a few more minutes of conduit time, then we should close up the shutters. Luden smiles. Thanks for doing this, Ayati. You're welcome. Happy to share the wonder of the universe with someone new. After the Howlin Wolf settles onto the landing pad at the Heraklion Interstellar Starport, Ayati shuts down the astrodrive and sees to the passengers disembarking, while Einur proceeds into the bowels of the ship to begin thawing the passengers in low berth. Now, normally in Traveler, there's a medic check required to open a low berth cryopod, but since there are 13 passengers, I don't really feel like rolling that many checks. So instead, I'm going to roll once to cover all the pods. But here's the thing. Normally, if you fail the check, the passenger doesn't survive the transit. Since I'm rolling for the whole group, if Einur fails, we'll have to figure out a percentage of the group that doesn't survive. But it's fine. I'm sure he'll do great. And I don't really want to think about it unless he does fail his roll. So let's roll the dice, see what happens, and then we can decide how we're going to approach it. So Einur has a medic of 2, including his intellect, and it's a routine check of 6+. So rolling the dice. Okay, 6 on the dice plus 2 is an 8. That's a success. So let's envision this. The cryo bay in the Howlin Wolf is located under the cargo hold, near the rear of the ship. There's a narrow walkway that descends into this cryo hold and then proceeds through the center of the ship with the berths located on either side. There are individual controls on each console, but at the end of the room is a central command console. Einur passes the 13 pods of frozen passengers, lingering for a moment on that family of 4. Once he reaches the command console, Einur calls up the thawing procedures and takes a deep breath. They're not foolproof, these pods, and if he thaws the people out too quickly, their bodies will go into shock. So he enters the sequence and begins the process, displaying all 13 passengers' vitals on the screen. He manually adjusts the rates of thaw as their vitals begin to rise. After a few tense moments, he releases a huge sigh of relief as he opens all the pods once they have thawed out and the passengers groggily begin climbing out of them. Once they're cognizant enough, he leads them up into the cargo hold where they can disembark. A smile fills his face as that family of 4 descends the boarding ramp and goggles at the transports and shuttles passing overhead. Just you wait till you get out there, he says, pointing to the exit into the greater starport. Then you'll be able to see the city skyline. It's pretty amazing. Thank you, one of the parents says, and the family walks out of the berth. 10 minutes later, they emerge from the hospital entrance and start heading towards Inspector Hallow's drift car. Sejana glances over and sees people still crowded around the fallen body. Turning, she heads in that direction. We don't have time, Hallow says. What if there are other assassins? Which, actually, is a really good question. Having sent one assassin who failed previously, would they send just one this next time? I think it's 50-50. They know she's injured, so maybe just sending one is all it would take. But most likely the masterminds behind the assassination know she's a technomancer from the Imperial Special Service, so 2 assassins might be worth the price. Let's roll the dice and find out. Is there only one assassin? A 50 or less will be a yes. 63. All right. They really want the job done. Let's roll a recon check for Sejana to see if she notices the second assassin. I don't think he's particularly hidden out here. In fact, I think he was more of a lookout, a backup if things went sideways, which they did. So I think this will be an average check. Sejana has a skill level of 1 plus her intellect of 2 for a total add of plus 3. 9 on the dice plus 3 is a 12. So Sejana takes a couple of steps towards the fallen body when she sees a figure standing past the crowd on the sidewalk watching the hospital entrance. She doesn't recognize his face, but she recognizes the stance. Former military, definitely carrying a weapon. He sees her and there's a flash of recognition that flits across his face. His hand goes to the weapon holstered at his side, but he hesitates. Sejana calls back to Hallow and says, "Guy across the street, another hitter." Hallow says, "All right, let's be smart about this. He can't start shooting up the place in broad daylight, but he'll also run if we just approach him." Sejana circles around the crowd, her fingers twitch, and purple-green energy wreathes her arm again. She lashes out, and a blast of void energy races out toward the man. Time for another telekinetic punch. This time, Sejana's rolling at +3 because she's spent a psi point already, reducing her score to 11, which only has a +1 modifier. So here we go. 6 on the dice, +3 is a 9, which succeeds with an effect of 1. So the damage on this telekinetic punch is equal to the effect, so it's only 1 point of damage, really minor for this guy. His eyes widen as a lance of void energy arcs toward him, and he tries to dive out of the way. It catches him in the hip, and I think it spins him about, slamming him into the ground. Sejana breaks into a run, charging at the man as he tries to scramble to his feet. She hears Hallow swear behind her, but Sejana's only focus is on reaching the man. Her body aches. Wounds that were mostly closed are starting to seep. Gritting her teeth, she reaches the man as he's scrambling to his feet. There's a flash of a knife in his hand, and Sejana pulls a short electroblade from behind her back, thumbing the activator as the rod hums to life with an electrical current. They face off, the man gritting his teeth, and Sejana says, "Surrender, or I won't go easy on you." He snarls and attacks. So I think it's time for initiative. Sejana has an intellect of +2, so she'll be rolling that. 6 + 2 is an 8. The assassin has a dex of 1, so he'll be rolling that. Ooh, 9 + 1 is 10. He wins the initiative. That's not great for Sejana. Let's see. Inspector Hallow also needs to be part of this. So she's rolling intellect, which is also a +2. She also got a 6. So that is 6 + 2 is an 8 for her initiative. So she and Sejana will go at the same time, but the assassin goes first. The assassin jumps up and pulls a dagger. In one smooth motion, he steps forward and strikes at Sejana, stabbing for her stomach. His melee blades skill is at a +1, and his dex is +1 as well, so he's rolling at +2 here. 8 + 2 is 10. All right, that's a success, and a dagger is 1d +2, plus the 2 for the effect. Okay, only a 1, so that's going to be 5 points of damage total. The blade hits Sejana's stomach, and the assassin's eyes widen as he realizes she's wearing a flak jacket under her shirt and coat. It turns the blade away, and Sejana smirks, slashing her blade across his chest. He's going to attempt to parry, which gives him a DM -1 for his next action, but it's going to inflict a negative DM equal to his melee skill, which is also -1, to Sejana's attack. She's rolling at +2, reduced to a +1 from the parry. Here we go. Oh, that parry is super important here. 6 + 1 is a 7, which is barely a failure. He managed to get his arm up and redirect her hand as she tries to slash across him. Inspector Hallow arrives, shouts for him to drop the weapon, draws out her stunner, and fires. She also has a dexterity of +1, plus her energy weapon skill of +2. So she's rolling at a +3. Oh, 4 on the dice, +3 is only a 7. She can't get a good bead on him. So when she fires, it just impacts on the Durcrete wall behind him. Heading into round 2 now, I think he's got a choice to make. Is he going to keep fighting, or is he going to surrender? His mission is to kill Sejana, but he's not really going to be able to get away cleanly with an inspector standing right there. Plus, it's the middle of the day, and there are a lot of witnesses. As far as what's been seen, he was attacked by this mad woman and is defending himself. Let's roll on the Oracle. I think it is likely that he surrenders, so a 75 or less will be a yes. That's a 27. So he throws down his dagger and backs away, looking at the inspector, and he says, I didn't know you were Cossack. Please, this woman just attacked me. She says, turn around, hands behind your head. I didn't do anything, he says. I was just defending myself. We'll get it all sorted, she says as she locks his hands in electro cuffs. I'll be back in a moment, Sejana says, deactivating her electro blade and sliding it into the spot behind her back. Hallow nods and continues reading the assassin his rights. People are staring at her as she approaches the crowd surrounding the fallen body. Hospital security holds up a hand and says, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to stand back. Sejana points back at Hallow. I'm with the inspector. Well, you guys got here fast, one of them says. Sejana shrugs and steps past the security line, then crouches down to search his pockets. Let's start with a recon check to see how thoroughly Sejana searches him. We're rolling at +3, and I think it's probably an average check. 6 + 3 is a 9, so a success. Whatever he has on him, she is going to find. So the next question that I have for the Oracle is, does he have anything incriminating on him? I think it's a small chance, so a 10 or less will be a yes on our Oracle dice. 59. All right, let's envision it. She's crouching over this broken and bloody body. She begins feeling for anything in his pockets. He has a knife and a small key card. Other than that, his pockets are empty. She takes both items and slips his cue off his arm, wiping some of his blood off with a fragment of untouched scrub. Satisfied, she activates her own cue and snaps an image of his face. Standing up, she turns and walks back toward the inspector. You know you contaminated evidence, Hallow says. Sejana shrugs. They're trying to kill me. I don't have time to wait for due process. She turns to the assassin. Who sent you? He stares straight ahead. Sejana scans his face and initiates a search. And we should probably make a computer's check for this. So I think it's an average difficulty. She has a total of +3 on that. So here we go. 8 on the dice +3 is an 11. So easily succeeds. After a few moments, she nods and says, Decant Evio Tarsus of the 2nd, an Imperial drop trooper. I have great respect for you and what your squads went through during the war. We served on the same side. I was ISS. De Cure Le Chale. We don't have to be enemies. Tell me what I need to know, and we'll let you walk. I think it's time for a good old-fashioned persuade roll, which is not great for Sejana because she's got no training in persuade. We'll be adding her intellect of 2, so that'll make it a -1. And you know what? I think we can make this a task chain. So Inspector Hallow says, I have enough to book you on. Maybe all you do is end up sitting in a cell for a few days. Maybe you get released right away. But I'm sure your employer will wonder what you're saying to us. If I let you go right now, there's no reason for me to write a report and put your name into it. She's going to roll her advocate skill, which is a 2 plus her intellect of 2 for a +4. I think this is an average check because, basically everything she says is true. She can book him and, maybe he'll just sit there for a few hours or a couple of days. But if she lets him go right now, she doesn't have to record his name or any evidence that he was caught. So here we go. 2d6 +4. Oof. These dice are killing me. So that's 4 on the dice. +4 is an 8, which is barely a success. So that will give Sejana a +1 to her persuade. That effectively cancels out the penalty for being untrained. And I think we can give Sejana a +2 for taking her time because she spent the time finding out who he actually is. This is going to be a difficult check, so we need a 10 or higher. Here we go. Okay, 8 on the dice plus 2 is a 10. Just barely, but still a success. The assassin's shoulders tense, and he looks at the inspector first, then to Sejana. Then he says, I received the contract from an info broker acting on behalf of another client. Sejana frowns. What info broker? His name was Rook? Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.